Letters to a Young Therapist. Chapter 26. Yearning. November 6th, 2002. Dear Laura, I was deeply touched last session to hear about the dreams of your new client. Since he was a boy, Andy has wanted to travel to Italy, to ride the ferry on Lake Como, and to hear an opera in Milan. You and I agreed that trip isn't in the near future for a man supporting a wife and 3 kids on a carpenter's salary. Andy reminds me of a fellow from my hometown who couldn't travel, but swore he had roamed the whole world by subscribing to National Geographic. What yearners we humans are! In all times and places we have wanted more, more, more. We have wanted to be with people who were dead or far away, or to be in different places or times in our lives. We have yearned for richer harvests, warmer huts, or to be stronger or more beautiful. We've desired more family or less, more work or less, and more complexity or more simplicity. Long ago, Basho, the Japanese master of haiku, wrote, "Even in Kyoto, hearing the cuckoo's cry, I yearn for Kyoto." This is especially true for Americans today, partly because advertising educates us to want more than we have, but also because we're flooded with more things to want. We can desire a DVD player, a trekking adventure in Nepal, a Lexus, or an MBA. Americans have grown richer over the course of the last century, but as our standard of living has risen, so have our expectations. The gap between what we want and what we possess has widened. On almost all measures of mental and social health, we've grown poorer. Right now, the United States has one of the highest rates of depression in the world. When Mother Teresa visited America, she noted that we have a worse poverty than India, a spiritual poverty, a loneliness that comes from wanting the wrong things. Writing The Middle of Everywhere, I came to see our culture more clearly. We Americans often are ignorant about the world and indifferent to the plight of others. We were born on third base thinking we had hit triples. Writing about refugees, I moved between 2 worlds, the America where people drank designer coffees and bought stereo systems, and the America of hungry children and ramshackle houses. I'd listen to a friend complain that she couldn't find fresh basil. Then I'd listen to a student cry as she told me her cousins in Ukraine were eating grass to stay alive. I would hear a colleague's report on his Alaskan cruise. Then I'd visit a refugee family who reported that their relatives were starving in a camp in Ghana. Recently, I watched part of a quote-unquote reality television program. I was disgusted and angered by it. Perhaps my work with refugees and the poor made me especially sensitive to its tastelessness. But I found it repugnant that in a world so filled with starving children and desperate people, Americans would watch manufactured trauma for entertainment. The superficiality and falsity of the show sickened me. If I had a choice of living with the creator of this show or living in the worst refugee camp in the world, I would choose the camp. At least there is something honest about suffering, about looking for food and shelter. Despair has a certain integrity. For the most part, Americans born early last century had reasonable expectations. They came of age during the Depression, when good luck meant you had shoes and dinner. But most Americans born after World War II have been encouraged to believe we can have everything. Of course, this sets us up for misery. If happiness depends on the ratio of fulfilled desires to total desires, no person whose desires are infinite can be satisfied. In fact, long ago, Tolstoy defined wealth as the number of things one can do without. Research shows that there are basically 2 kinds of people, satisficers and maximizers. Maximizers are people who always want to make the best choices. Satisficers say, good enough. A satisficer enjoys his meal at a restaurant. A maximizer asks himself, is this really the best place in town? And did I order the right dish? Most human misery comes from having a 95% good life, but trying to achieve that last 5%. We tend to discover what we seek. People who want money tend to acquire it. People who seek hedonistic pleasures, adventures, or love generally find what they want. People who look for humor find it, as do people who look for trouble. People are pretty much as happy as they make up their minds to be. As my Aunt Grace said from her rocking chair by the window where she watched birds feed, I get what I want, but I know what to want. If our clients want to be rock stars, rear perfect children, or inhabit marriages filled with nonstop romance, they are doomed to fail. If they expect stress-free jobs or kids who don't sass, they are programmed for discontent. Contentment involves learning to balance one's dreams with reasonable expectations. The opposite of yearning is savoring the exquisite now. As one yoga teacher called out in class, experience your body. Are you remembering it or feeling it? We therapists can remind our clients of an equivalent message, be here now. We can ask clients to keep a daily record of what they have appreciated. Gratitude rituals, such as saying grace or thanking others for small kindnesses, make a difference. A good way to fall asleep at night is to think back on all the pleasant events of the day. Counting blessings is good for mental health. Often I encourage couples to enter a compliment competition to see which spouse can praise the other the most in a genuine way. If we view lives as timelines, most people have both happy and sad eras. Especially toward the end, some years are rough. My life has been mostly lucky. As a child, I had a family filled with lively, good-hearted, if sometimes hapless people. I have had a good education, challenging work, good health, and my own family to love. As an adult, I've had friends, adventures, and a home in a safe, quiet place. But my life, like everyone else's, has also been filled with sadness. My parents both died long and agonizing deaths by inches. One of my closest friends committed suicide. Another died of a brain tumor. I have worried a great deal about my work, my siblings, and my kids. I have endured chronic insomnia, surely one of life's greatest curses, and I have often felt anxious and inadequate for the tasks at hand. Like most writers, I am lonely. Sometimes I feel discouraged. I think of the ways I have failed, and life has failed me, and I try to tell myself, you have had a lot. Nobody gets everything. Laura, right now, Andy is in no position to go to Italy, but there may be a time when he can. Meanwhile, his dreams comfort him. Dreams have kept many people sane as they worked at boring jobs or coped with difficult times. Every now and then in the therapy, you can bring up Italy. When Andy is discouraged with his life, you can ask him to describe what it might be like to ride in a gondola at night or drink wine at a small cafe near La Scala. Fall is really the season of yearning. At the same time we're aware of the earth's fiery glory, we're aware of its passing and the approaching winter. We yearn to stop time, to make our lives an endless Indian summer, but the message of autumn is to accept what is given. What's coming next may be harder. As Ezra Pound wrote, winter is a-comin', sing goddamn, sing goddamn. Chapter 27. Things are becoming something else. November 23rd. Dear Laura, I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving. My kids will all be home. We'll have our usual walks on the prairie, Trivial Pursuit games, and movies. It is my favorite holiday, a celebration of family, even though we'll also have our usual arguments and tense moments. Then they will go home and winter will come. After the holidays, you'll have a new supervisor. I will miss your friendly smile and eager questions. I will miss writing you these letters. Life is always changing. Time passes. Thoughts and emotions come and go. Tragedy strikes, and then grace and joy peek around the corner. Relationships flourish and wither. Passion waxes and wanes. Hope flags and then returns at our darkest moment. Whatever is happening now will be replaced. Buddhists recommend non-attachment. In the end, what I really want to say is this. Although many of us have joyous interludes, for most people, life is hard. As author Wallace Stegner wrote, we were going to leave our mark on life, but instead, life left marks on us. Some lucky people enjoy delicious decades, but for many people, every stage of life waxes at least as difficult as it is easy. Almost everyone I know has a much harder and more complicated life than others realize. Parenthetically, this awareness allows me to tolerate cranks and grumps. When a clerk snaps at me, or a driver honks and gives me the finger, I tell myself, who knows what that person is enduring right now? Perhaps they have a family member dying, or are about to declare bankruptcy, or have just been dumped by the person they most desire. Childhood is idyllic only in retrospect. Children have lives fully as complex as those of adults. Adolescence can be torture, young adulthood filled with angst, and adult life thorny with problems. People get married or they don't. Their children grow up or they don't. They grow ancient or they don't. Old age, if people make it that far, requires the patience of Job. To survive, we must all learn to live in the world with broken hearts. My father's life is a case in point. He was born in 1916 in the Ozark Mountains. When he was young, his father went crazy and was institutionalized for the rest of his life. My dad's family fell from status and wealth to shame-filled poverty. They lived in a cabin in the woods and ate squirrels and turtles if they could catch them. During World War II, as a medic in Okinawa and the Philippines, my father saw terrible things. All his adult life, he struggled to find his place. He was Mr. Mom in an era when that role was seen as being a freeloader. He failed at 1,000 get-rich-quick schemes. In the 1960s, his teenagers let him down by becoming social activists. At 50, he had a debilitating stroke. Then he had many more strokes before dying, blind and crippled at 65. His story can be told another way. My dad was good-looking, fun-loving, and popular. He was a high school basketball star. His mother and sisters doted on him, and he married a woman he was crazy about, who loved him until the end. He fished, traveled all over the world, and had a dozen hobbies. His story is no sadder than many others' lives. His life was a life. In South Africa, I was enchanted by the Cape of Good Hope, the place where the icy, choppy Atlantic meets the serene and warmer Indian Ocean. That beautiful cape is also known as the Cape of Storms. In my mind, I can see the cusp of a wave, the one that signals the place the Atlantic crashes into the Indian Ocean. The froth on that wave, that is where life is. We are all more alike than we are different. In the end, we all want the same things, what I called the 5 R's in my book, Another Country. Beyond the basics such as food and shelter, but not really less essential, we all want respect, relaxation, relationships, results, and realization. Respect and relaxation are self-evident. By relationships, I mean we want to love and be loved. By results, I mean that we yearn to do good work. We want to live well, and we need our lives to matter. Realization refers to fulfilling our potential. Margaret Mead defined the ideal society as one that has a place for every human gift. The ideal human life allows for the development of those gifts and their use for the benefit of others. Of course, we all have our neuroses, our blind spots, and our Achilles heels. We're all Shakespearean buffoons as well as tragic heroes. Yet, paradoxically, even as doing therapy has helped me see all of the cruelties and stupidities that we humans commit, it has also reinforced my belief, developed in my childhood, that most people are basically decent. I think of my client Helga, a middle-aged Czech woman who butchered hogs in her basement and called refrigerators ice boxes and garages car sheds. She had been physically abused as a girl by her father and tormented during her years in school for being heavy and poor. She had married a farmer, much less intelligent than she, who had become very ill. Helga worked a factory job, ran the farm, and took university correspondence courses, even as she raised kids, cared for her husband, and did all the housework. She came to therapy because her husband, threatened by her intelligence, didn't want her to go to college. She felt she must complete her education so that she would be prepared herself to support the family when he was gone. And besides, she loved school. She pronounced the word college in a hushed and reverent way. As Helga and I talked, I felt what I often feel, a deep respect for the courage of ordinary people, the ones who get up every morning and do what needs to be done. Therapists cannot eliminate sickness, death, bullies, financial scandals, mean-spirited coworkers, or unforgiving kin, but we are not helpless. We can tell people that, yes, life is hard, but they are not without adequate resources and wisdom to cope. We can spin a web of stories or help them create a careful decision. We can suggest they watch a sunset, cuddle a baby, or dance under cottonwoods. Buddha said, life is suffering, but he didn't say it was ignoble. At best, our work allows people to hallow suffering into empathy and wisdom. We therapists are small potatoes, but we are connected to an ancient and beautiful idea. Since time began, humans have needed shamans, curanderos, and tribal healers. We have implored each other for help exorcising our demons. Since the beginning, we have asked the same questions. Am I safe? Am I important? Am I forgiven? Am I loved? Our profession has experienced its share of blunders, some of them disastrous, but our goals of understanding others' points of views, alleviating human suffering, and enhancing relationships are noble goals. At our best, we respect the complexity of the universe with all its uproar and glory. Songwriter Greg Brown compared life to a thump-ripe melon, so sweet and such a mess. One of the Shavano principles of spiritual activism is, do not insulate yourself from the pain of the world. The text reads, when we open ourselves to the pain of the world, we become the medicine that heals the world. Writing this book, I discovered that being a therapist is less about making a living and more about living my life. Simply put, it's a way of paying attention, which is the purest form of love. Laura, there is no better work than the work we do. It has been a pleasure to watch you flower and bloom over the year. You will be an excellent therapist. Welcome to our field. So ends Letters to a Young Therapist by Mary Pipher.